Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to be selected as the first lecturer of the Fred Grassle Memorial Lecture Series in the ILC. It's a big surprise for me. At the very beginning, I was get some information about this from World Appleton or other Japanese colleagues who are working very hard for the current OBIS. But also, it's great news for me spending almost 30 years with Fred. My history with Fred starts 1982 when I have just finished my doctoral thesis. He provided me some suggestions about the editing for the publications, and a face-to-face meeting was held in 1985 at Hamburg at the first Deep Sea Biology Symposium was held under the supervision of the Dr. Thiel. Maybe these names are too old for you to... But anyway, so as a memorial lecture, I'd like to introduce the history of the census of marine life because it's the OBIS was developed as a part of the four major goals of the census of marine life. And then I'd like to introduce briefly about the history of OBIS as well. And also, I'd like to conclude or evaluate the OBIS as a legacy of census of marine life. So the history started at July 2nd, 1996. It's more than 20 years ago. Fred visited Jesse Osbell, who was the vice president of the Sloan Foundation, and asking to support the big global scale science under the, recognition which was provided by National Research Council under the title Understanding Marine Biodiversity, a research agenda for the nations. And following slides and some of the photographs, I could not follow who took that, so the credit is missing partially. But many slides and the photographs were provided by Jesse Osbell as well as Mark Costello, who has been the chair of the OBIS International Committee. So the very first, I'd like to apologize for that point. But anyway, so this visit and before the phone call is the beginning of this census of marine life. And after that, 3 years feasibility study have been carried out. Under the three questions, one is could it be done, would it be done, and should it be done? And the first question, should it be done, is very clear because at that time the marine environment is getting worse and worse by the many activities on the oceans. And would it be done? It is slightly hard to overcome because there are so many different cultures among marine biologists. It's very difficult to communicate to each other between the deep sea biologists with the coastal marine biologists, etc., etc. And could it be done at the time of the 90s is the emerging period for the development of the technologies on marine biology as well as ocean science and also information technologies. So in the coming 10 years, if we could utilize all these development probably it may be possible to do some census of marine life in the global scale. So the Sloan Foundation decided to support this project, and Census of Marine Life was launched at the year of 2000. Some of you may remember that the catchphrase of the Census of Marine Life is making ocean life count. And we made some small clips for advertising this project, and it was thrown in the CNN. And very interestingly, that video clip was open to the public only outside of USA, using the CNN channel to make this project international as much as possible. But anyway, the Census of Marine Life had 4 components. One is what did live in the ocean. The second is what does live in the ocean. And the third is what will live in the ocean. And the fourth component, which is how to access and visualize data on living marine resources. That is the concept of OBIS, which is again Cindy introduced the big idea of Fred Grassle. So after the first call, there were 2 workshops for designing the census of marine life. And then after the third workshop, the census launched at the year of 2000. And this is the year, again, the OBIS was launched with census of marine life. And to carry out this project in an international manner, International Scientific Steering Committee was established in 1999 before the formal launch of Census of Marine Life. And at the very first meeting was held, there were only 10 steering committee members were selected, and I was very fortunately selected to be one of that, simply because Fred knew me, and he probably needs some Japanese to join it. But I'd like to emphasize that Patricio Bernal, who was the director of the IOC, was also a member of this first International Scientific Steering Committee of the Census of Marine Life. Then the members have been changed or evolved with time, and the number increased. At the year, for example, 2004, the number is much more than 10. And also, the International Secretariat was formally established in the core ocean, which is now not core ocean, it's ocean leadership in the United States. And also there was an educational outreach group was established in University of Rhode Island. I'd like to emphasize the characteristic of Census Marine Life is spending a huge effort for the public outreach. About 1/3 of the budget was used for this in the total budget of Census Marine Life. And so yesterday there was some discussion, the IODE data, how to disseminate this information to the public. Maybe the effort we need to spend very huge. And a good example is, I think, Census of Marine Life. Anyway, so these steering committees met in a variety of places, for example, in the very windy Aberdeen, or very south Punta Arenas, or at the Azores, and the onboard ship of the Geozals, which Norway have built mainly for the sensors of wildlife, or in Australia, in the tropical rainforest, or in Nara, Japan, Fred was playing, following the Japanese style, or Quito, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the hydrothermal vent ecosystem research. Or even we went to Antarctic. He was sitting outside the blizzard. Oh, very sunshine, big sunshine. So with the development of sensors of wildlife, we had a history of OBIS. The history of OBIS is very similar to the history of the sensors of wildlife, but the initial idea was developed in the pre-COML workshop in 1997, and the website demonstration was already started in 1998, and that was based on the Sloan Fund. Then the OBIS workshop was held in 1999, and the formal OBIS was launched at the year of 2000 under the support of National Ocean Partnership Program. And then the International Steering Committee was formed in 2001, and the funding from the NSF, or National Ocean Partnership Program, have been continued. And I would like to introduce some slides which was used to the International Steering Committee of the Sensors of Marine Life in the year of 2004. What was 2007 OBIS was. At that time, International Committee was these staffs. Also, technical working group was held. And then there was several international committee meetings in 2003 or 2004 in San Diego Supercomputer Center or Halifax, under the support of, I think, Ron O'Donnell from the Halifax. So this is the very first members of OBIS. There are 8 marine biodiversity database over there joining to the OBIS. So OBIS is a kind of portal of these 8 and some additional biodiversity databases. And OBIS already have the architectures like a portal and survey, collecting the information from the data servers associated with the OBIS as a whole. This is the very first front page of the International OBIS. You can see how many, what is inside, and there are countable number of the databases which is contributed to OBIS. And if you go to a little bit deep for the search pages, there are only these numbers of the databases are listed here. But the concept of the search image is very similar to right now. So put the scientific name or select the areas to be searched and go to the search for the data inside of the OBIS. And the return is like this. But the characteristics of OBIS at the very beginning is they already had mappers inside. It's very unique, and how to visualize the data to the public was the very first image of OBIS, and now already at the very beginning it was realized. Even there are two mappers inside of OBIS at the very beginning. One is developed by CSIRO and the other is developed in I think Kansas University. And at the May 2003, they said they have 860 records in there, about 57 species, 1,000 species. And the biggest provider to that OBIS at that point was Fishbase and Fishnet. So mainly the OBIS was an information system of fishes at that time. And some additional data providers were already exist. They are voluntary providers, but it includes even a history of marine animal populations, which is one of the core project of Census of Marine Life. And at that time, they envisaged that they want to have better search and retrieval engines. And they are looking at the new technologies. And also, even they are looking at the physical environmental data integration at that time. It is now implemented in the current OBIS systems. If you look back at the year of about 2000, it is at a time where there are many initiatives for making the database of the biodiversity. For example, in Japan, there was a project called Species 2000 in collaboration with the UK and European countries. So it's a time for emerging database project in global scale. But within that, OBIS has a very leading roles, at least for the marine biological database. But at that time, the link of Census of Marine Life to IODE was not seen in their presentation. Unfortunately, I do have some project with IOC Westpac, so we had a Westpac communication with OBIS, but in the global scale, the IODE and the OBIS was not interlinked before. And also, even at that time, the funding concern was exist over there. Even at the year of 2004, we have discussed how to continue the legacy of this project. But the OBIS have a meeting continues, and the key of that was, I think, the collaboration with Encyclopedia of Life. That will let integrate variety of information about a single species with not only the biogeographic information, but also, for example, literacy information, etc. That will make OBIS very popular throughout the world. And the international project of Census was providing many data. And the OBIS data point was increased to this coverage at the year of 2006. And the record is about 8 million at that time. And the developing of OBIS is continued. But they have some problems, for example, mostly in shallow waters, who are very limited to the taxonomic groups, and the bias for the geographic distribution of data. And the OBIS is still working or struggled for the following or how to keep the legacies. But the Census of Marine Life have ended at 2010 with a huge success. More than the 700 scientists, 80 countries, and a lot of the legacies. And we could find a lot of information about biogeography or biodiversity of the marine species. And even we could make a map of the biodiversity in the global scale. This is what Fred wanted to make it. And the final gathering was held in San Francisco, I think, on the cruise ship. And the Census of Marine Life steering committee get an award of the Cosmos Prize. So the founder of Census, the Yoshihisa, was very happy. And at that time, the chairperson of the International Steering Committee was Ian Poyner from Australia, so he was awarded. The real medal is displayed in the Ocean Hall of Smithsonian Institution Natural History Museum. So please go there if you want to see it. After that, we are very much worried about what the OBIS will go, but I would like to say it's continue to grow. This is before the census of the end of Census of Marine Life, and this is after the finish of Census of Marine Life, and the number of the datas or number of databases contributing to OBIS is still increasing. That is great, and the other point is they are starting to contribute to science in real. Many publications are based on the information stored in OBIS, and also it's now globally used. And so many papers are based on the data or information in OBIS. So at the year of 2004, the goal of OBIS was next generation information infrastructure for marine biology and living marine resource management. I would say at that time, today, OBIS is beyond the original vision there, and now it's a basic, not only basic, but prerequisite infrastructure for the oceanography as well as marine biology. Thank you very much for your attention.